Hello and welcome to this week's lesson on computer education. And for this week, we're going to discuss what is Python. These are the programming skills that we'd like you to have at the end of the lesson. Be familiar with the lessons and the skills that you need to accomplish because at the end of the semester, as much as possible, gather 75% of all the skills in your checklist in order to get a passing grade in computer education for this semester. Now, to start off, let's define what is programming before we move on to the programming language Python. Programming is a process of creating step-by-step instructions for computers to follow. The programmer, which is you, designs the algorithm to solve the problem and create solutions that can be efficiently performed by the machine. The machine, which is we're referring to the computer. So you notice we've used the term here algorithms, and from last week's discussion, you should know already what algorithms are. So it's a step-by-step process in order to solve a problem. So essentially, we gather information from a user, so that's input. Okay, so we get information from the environment, from the user of the program. Then your program, which is the majority of your code, which is the process, it will process the information gathered, and then finally, if it all goes well, then it will show a certain output, and that output hopefully is the expected output which you have designed for this particular algorithm or problem. So we're defining programming here because remember it's giving out instructions for the computer to understand. You have to have clear instructions for computers, and computers are very obedient. They will just follow what you just told them to do. But before you can make instructions, you have to know the language by which a computer can understand you. So there are many ways to talk to a computer, and these are some of the languages around that we can use. These are logos of popular programming languages, and maybe one of them is familiar to you because you have had them from last year's computer class. So you have C Sharp there, C++, or the C programming. Okay. So for this year, we are going to know more about this language called Python. Okay. So finally, we want to answer what is Python. Python is an interpreted, object-oriented, high-level programming language with dynamic semantics. To put it simply, we are writing our code not necessarily in machine code, which is zeros and ones. Our language that we use to instruct the computer is like an English-like language, almost English-like, but it will be further interpreted, not really by us, but as a different program that will convert our instructions in English into zeros and ones that a computer can understand. Okay, so fortunately, we are on that level already. Okay, because in the past, computer engineers or software engineers before, they have to write the code in zeros and ones or in assembly code, something higher than that. It can be very cryptic, especially for those who are not into math or engineering. But nowadays, almost anyone can code already. So one example of this is the Scratch programming language, the one with the cat, if you remember. So it uses visual blocks to create the code for you, but underneath it will be um, translated to something that the computer really understands. So what makes Python different from other languages? Well, I hope this statement will speak for itself also, and your experience also in our class. You will have to determine, or actually you will realize that Python code is easy to read because of its simplified syntax. Okay, so we can use Python code also into modules. So we can make mini programs that we can combine together in order for us to make a program almost immediately. So rapid program development. So we want, as much as possible, we want to solve our problem as fast as possible, right? So we can just reuse some parts of our code in the past or some programs that we've made and then combine them into a bigger program. Then if you're interested to download, and I really advise you to download Python on your computer so that you can also work offline from python.org. The interpreter and the extensive standard library are free to download from that website. As far as we know, Python is always be free. So try your best to, of course, download as much as you can for the especially the tutorials and the resources that you can find in that website. So just to show you or a sampler for coding in Python, this is how it looks like. So I guess if you just glance over it, you'll have an idea what it is for. Okay, this is for like storing password in a certain file called secret password file.txt. And what it does, this program does, it actually opens that file that contains a password and then compares it to the password inputted by a certain user. And then if it matches, then good. If it's not, then access denied. And probably if you notice also that there is no semicolons in sight right now, right? So some of you might have encountered, can be annoying, this problem with semicolons from last year's code. It can be annoying because you tend to forget to end your codes or your statements in semicolons. So here you don't need to do that. So if you want to get the information from the user, you simply use simple functions like input function, and or if you want to display something, you just use the print function. So Python essentially is can be downloaded from this website, python.org again, and you go to downloads and you find the appropriate folder, or rather the operating system for your computer. So of course, if you're using Windows, that's your operating system, your OS. So you download the right version. If you're using Windows 10, so hopefully you download Windows. And if you're using an Apple computer, especially the Mac computers, your operating system is Mac OS. Or if you're if you're a technology enthusiast or computer science enthusiast, you might be familiar with the open source operating system, which is Linux. There is also one for Linux there. Okay, so download the right installer for your operating system. So you might find major versions of Python. So especially when you try to research for answers online, there will be, you'll encounter 2.7 and also Python 3 point something. Okay, from on my computer right now, I have 3.7. So we will use newer versions of Python. Hopefully, it should start with the number 3. So 3 point, then I think the current version as I'm speaking right now is 3.8. So download the latest version of Python for our class. Okay, so the X refers to the number or a version number. Okay. So once you have installed Python on your computer, you will have to look for this icon, or actually file or application name, which is idle. Okay, so idle is an interactive shell. It serves as your IDE or interactive development environment for you to make, or you use it to make programs written in Python. So it's like a text editor, and you can also use it to run your programs. So no, I don't know if there's a debugger there, but basic Python programming, it's all there. You just need a text editor, and you just save it in Python file, and that's it. So there are two modes: the interactive mode and the script mode. Okay, so I want you to be familiar with those two, because and also distinguish the difference between the two modes, so that when you code later on, you will not be confused which mode you are currently in, and you will be submitting and the correct version of the Python program that I'm asking for the hands-on activities. Okay, so in this slide, you will see a screenshot of the interactive mode. So once you open idle on your computer, once installed, this will open the default window, which is for the interactive mode. Okay, so the first few texts that you will see above, of course, you have the menu there. So file, edit, shell, debug, options, window, help. But in that workspace area, you'd find the Python version and also your computer specs. And there is some things that, or guides, in order for you to start your Python program. And also you have this prompt symbol. Okay, so the red arrows there, the three red arrows, this is where you input your data or command. So um, it's a blinking arrow that follows those three red arrows, prompting you to type something. Okay, so hopefully you can try out that interactive mode, and you can also use it for testing your codes or programs when coding in Python. So I want you to see for yourself what will happen if you try to type these different types of data. Okay, so remember, in coding, data is important. Okay, if we want our programs to be smarter or can do a lot of things, then of course you have to provide some information to the computer. So after the prompt symbol, I want you to try typing numbers. Okay, numbers with operations, letters. Okay, so letters and numbers. Okay, and then if you encounter a certain error, please take note of those errors. As much as possible, try to write them down, take a screenshot, or maybe have a document that will collect or contain all your errors, and then for later reference. Okay, so what could be the rule for inputting certain types of data? I want you to find your answers as you try out the interactive mode. Then when you're done with the interactive mode, it's time to move on to the other mode of the idle, which is coding in script mode. Okay, so to access that, you go to the file menu and then click new file. Okay, so from before, I will have to go back to my previous slide and just simply go to this file menu. Okay, so you click that, there is an option new file, and as you click new file, it will open this window, which is kind of empty, and it looks like Notepad, right? So it's like a text editor. It behaves like a text editor. Okay, so the first line, if you want to go to the next line, you just simply press enter. Backspace works here, delete works here, cursors or the left arrow keys or the right arrow keys or the arrow keys in general are working here to navigate with your text. The main difference of this mode from the immediate mode or the interactive mode is that in order for you to run the program, you have to save it first, okay? Because here in script mode, when you press enter, it just goes to the next line. Okay, so as I mentioned, it is also a way to code in your using your idle and in in Python programming language. So the script mode behaves like a text editor when where you can press enter key to add a space and move the cursor using the directional keys. So the Python scripts require you to use functions to work with your data. For example, so we're talking about the script mode here. So to display the text, how are you must use the print function. So you've seen it earlier in the sampler program in the earlier slide. You have this print function. So the text print, open and close parenthesis, is in the example below, you will find the sentence must be within the parenthesis, and the text, if you want to make the text appear, it has to be in quotation marks. Okay, so to tell you in advance, there's a purpose for that, and it actually formats the text into what we call a string data or string value. Okay, so please don't forget about that. If you're using the idle program and of course with its default settings, if you enclose the text in quotation marks, you can use single quotes, which is using only the apostrophe, two apostrophes at both ends of the text, or the actual quotation marks, the double quotes, here in enclosing your string. And it will convert it into a string and the color becomes color green. Okay, so print, how are you to display it, and you have to save it before you can run it. So you must go to File, okay, File menu, and then find a suitable directory. Especially, as much as possible, try to make a folder for your Python files on your computer. Then type the file name, add .py at the end of it. Then when it is already saved, the file name should appear in the title bar of the script window. Then press F5 or click run module to run the program. Okay, so there is an option. We go back two more slides before. There is an option here to click run. So when you click that, there is an option to run the module, and then it will actually run your program, and it will open your program in the interactive mode. So don't be surprised if the interactive mode suddenly activates. So you will see how the program runs in that mode. Okay, so this is somewhat the primer for what is Python. There are more tutorials to come, so I hope you will be able to accomplish the hands-on activities with these tutorials and other materials that is already posted in our Google Classroom. I want you to study for other resources or look for other resources that you can find for Python. There are so many resources that we can find online. But as much as possible, try to also limit or focus your research also to the topics as much as possible, especially if you're just beginning to learn Python. So as you're not, you will not be overwhelmed with the information that you'll find here. I think that's it, and thank you. I will end my slides here. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.